Hello, welcome to Staring to the Abyss. With me as always, with a figure of his silhouette head in the sky, with something behind it that's underneath it. Matt, run! Matt!
You know what? I'm just going to attach strings to my arms and legs because I'm tired of walking.
Villame?
Yeah, well, I don't know about you guys, but I'm feeling a little like, I've been feeling cold these couple of days. Like something's like blowing through holes in my skin. It's so weird.
Welcome to Staring to the Abyss. Today we're going to be discussing a collection of manga by Junji Ito called Shiver, which came out a few weeks ago. And it is a really fantastic collection of manga. Like, I think it's one of Junji Ito's best collections.
You know what's funny is we had covered a while back, I think it was Shattered or Smashed. And what's funny is because when you brought up wanting to cover Shiver, I was like, I swear I read this. This was another one of the misreading on my part because I read Shivered first. And then when I actually looked at what you wanted us to read, I was like, oh, crap. So I read this once before. And so I was like, well, this is great. I'll read it again and remember it. But it just goes to show, pay attention when people tell you things.
There's two mangas with a similar title.
I know. I was like, what the heck? That's what confused me when I saw the letter S and I was like, all right, I'm in.
And I mean, like, to me, so, like, I'll just say before we get into our daily recommendations, I've been reading Junji Ito since, like, I was in high school.
Same.
Like, I still have the original paperback manga of Uzumaki.
Oh my gosh. I didn't even knew they came out in paperback.
Back in 2003, they came on paperback, Matt.
Jeez.
It won the Eisner Award, actually, back in 2003.
That is neat.
Yeah, no, I had the paperbacks of Uzumaki. I still have those. So I've been reading Ito for a long time. Same with anime. Like we're Ito fans for a long time. And I have my opinions about Ito. And I think one thing I don't like about Ito is a lot of his characters seem to lack agency. But I think this collection is some of the best work he's done. Like, this collection is easily some of my favorite stories that Ito's put out. If you're looking to start anywhere with him, Shiver, I think, is a great place to start.
Yeah.
It'll give you a pretty good taste of what he does.
And it's not as gross as some of those other ones. I think his other collections, you'll get, like, his silly, awkward family stories, and then you'll get, like, his super gross stories, and then you'll get, like, the Shark Woman story, and then you'll get, like, some super creepy, weird stories, and then just get a couple super gross stories. And like he really loves like the gross stories.
Yeah. He does.
Lots of fluids in his mangas, just to give people a warning. Lots of fluids and phobias.
So much.
They're everywhere. But before we do a deep dive, we can give a rundown of some media that we've consumed this last week. And because I know I have a bad habit of being an ADHD reader, where I have been like, I'm reading this book, and then I never mention it again. Well, fuck you. I'm about halfway through the Deluge.
Good job.
Compared to where it was before. And this is easily one of the best books I've read, like, in a long time. Nice. Like, it is honestly fantastic.
Who wrote it again?
Stephen Markley.
Okay.
It is 889 pages. So
that's the rock that you were reading.
Yeah, I'm still reading it.
We'll give you the we understand that's a big book. It's going to take some time.
But I'm almost halfway through. And it's gone in directions I was expecting it to go in, and in a more interesting direction than I expected. It's also due to the fact it deals with global warming, probably will not find the audience that it deserves to find. Because global warming and climate change is a big theme in the novel. And the idea behind it is like it's following characters of different backgrounds and different beliefs. So like one character is a climate scientist and he wrote a book about global warming and nobody listened to him. And it kind of follows him as he's trying to convince people that global warming is important, and it's all falling on deaf ears as it's kind of moving further and further and further to the future. Another character is written in second person who's a drug addict and a pretty shit person. And his whole arc so far is kind of showing how climate change is affecting the poor and needy and the desperate before it's affecting everybody else. So like those group of people get fucked over first. And they're the group of people nobody cares about, which is why nobody's addressing global warming issues. It gets into a lot of stuff like that. But like every character is super fleshed out. Every character has its own voice and their own style. So he's legit changing styles and voices every single chapter in this book.
Oh, nice.
And from a writing standpoint, I'm just amazed at like how talented this fucking guy is. But overall, like if you want an existentially terrifying book, as well as a really great epic character drama with some fantastic action pieces so far, The Deluge is definitely up there. Hopefully I have it done by next week, but we'll find out. And I'm also about halfway through the new Jeff Strand novel, Demon.
Oh, nice.
And it's a lot of fun.
That is awesome.
Jeff Strand is always a good time, and Demons is no exception. Demons is my bedtime read. I pop it up on my Kindle as I'm falling asleep. And it's funny. It's a bit more extreme horror than like what you'd expect from Jeff Strand. The premise is our main character goes into work one day and his work wife comes in with a black eye. And they're talking, and she explains how her husband sometimes has a mean streak. And then she reveals to him that her husband's a serial killer.
Oh, all right.
And that he forces her to partake in his killings.
Oh, wow.
And after he kills someone, he's good for a few months until he needs to kill again. God. So our main character decides to save his work wife by trying to kill her husband.
All right.
And let's just say he can't die.
Wait, the husband or the main character?
The husband can't die.
Okay.
Like, she opens with him stabbing the husband in the neck like 8 times, and the husband just falls down, gets back up, bleeding out, and he's just acting like no big deal.
Oh my gosh.
Oh, okay.
And he's part of this cult that we'll get expanded on later in the novel so far, but it's a wild ride.
That sounds amazing.
It has your typical Jeff Strand over-the-top horror elements, and also your Jeff Strand humor that goes with it as well. Like, so I mean, if you like Jeff Strand, it's a good Jeff Strand read. But if you haven't read Jeff Strand before, it's a good book for like showing you what Jeff Strand's about, at least some of what his stuff's about. So I'd say it's a good jumping in point, and if you're a fan, it's a solid read.
That's great.
Awesome.
And then, being quick, I saw Knock at the Cabin.
And how was it?
It was good.
Yeah.
I mean, was it like as expected of Shyamalan, or?
So, okay, I think as the movie stands, it's good. I think I would have liked it better if I hadn't read the book.
Okay.
And I read the book back when the book first came out.
Yeah.
Have you read Cabin at the End of the World?
Yes.
No.
Okay. So I'm not going to spoil too much. And this will spoil a little bit of the movie, but it's kind of what you would expect Shyamalan to do. So it's not that much of a spoiler. You know how by the end of the book, you don't know if the apocalypse part was real, and it keeps it more of an ambiguous element?
Yeah.
In the movie, you have a definitive answer.
Okay.
And I think having a definitive answer takes away from the plot, because making it ambiguous or keeping it ambiguous would have made it more interesting.
Yeah.
Shyamalan doesn't like ambiguity.
No, he doesn't.
So like you would expect him to have an answer, you know?
Yeah.
But I think the ambiguity book makes
but I mean he likes his answers, but did he like do the answer with a twist? Like he always does?
There's no twist.
Oh, okay.
Was he in it?
Oh, the twist. Yeah, he's in it.
Oh my God.
Of course
in the movie, they turn on the TV and he's in an infomercial trying to sell an air fryer.
Okay. That works.
It's your typical M. Night cameo. Like
I hate this. Okay. If I were Paul, I would have been pissed. Seriously, I would have like, okay, you can direct my film, but if you fucking appear in it, I will smash you.
I mean, I know a couple things, but I can't say on recording, but I can tell you guys after the recording.
Okay.
Right.
But that being said, it's a decent movie. It's not bad. It's not great, but it's entertaining.
Is Rupert Grint okay in it?
Rupert Grint's actually pretty good in it. He tried a Boston accent and kind of succeeded.
So what? He practiced that in Cabinet of Curiosities. And
yes, he
did.
Yeah.
But his character, like, it's a different type of role for him because his character's like a complete asshole.
So he's not a wizard.
No. That is perfect for him because he, like, Ron is an asshole. Like, he played an asshole. So yeah.
He's a complete, like, his character is a full-on asshole in this.
Oh, okay. So basically, it's Ron, but just a muggle.
And,
or is that the twist? Does he have magic?
Maybe.
Batista's really good in it, though.
All right. I mean,
you didn't say no. That's the twist.
I didn't say no.
We find out Harry Potter's real in this world.
Yes.
I thought Batista did a good job with his character.
I mean, he's a good actor. Like you, I think it's really funny that all of the wrestlers are really good actors.
Hey, you know.
I'm not a big fan of Dwayne Johnson's acting. I think
he's okay. Like, I mean, it's forgettable, but you know, it's fine. Like the kids like him.
Dwayne Johnson has charisma. He has charisma. So like he's likable. Yeah. I think John Cena, he found a good fitting with the comedic roles.
Yes.
And the comedic roles led him into doing some more dramatic stuff.
Yes.
Because even with like Suicide Squad and Peacemaker, which are mostly comedic, he had some really solid dramatic moments in those shows in the movie.
Yes.
And I think Batista, he didn't want to do the Dwayne Johnson route and just be the Hollywood blockbuster guy. He's actually trying to be an actor.
Yeah,
He's actually going to like.
He's experimenting.
Like
he's experimenting with different roles and everything.
Yeah, because like for me, when I saw him in Blade Runner 2077, like that was a unique role for him to take. I thought he did great in that movie. Just like him in Dune, he has a small role in Dune, but he was also pretty role too.
Yeah,
I think he's really been coming into his own as an actor, so it's been fun to see.
Mm-hmm.
But I'll say my own opinion for Cabin. I'm happy the movie got made. I hope it's a success for Paul's sake, because I would love some of Paul's other stuff adapted to film.
Yes, we need more horror fiction adapted into films that is not King.
Yeah.
Hey,
no offense to you, Stephen.
You see the trailer for the Boogeyman though?
No.
I don't wanna. I started seeing a little bit of it, and I was like, I'm okay. I got bored actually, to be honest.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm happy that Paul got this movie made, and it with someone like M. Night, it should be a success.
Mm-hmm.
It's just for me the ending and like the what they changed from the novel to the movie is what I liked most about the novel.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So I think like a lot of people might not have that same effect it had on me because I love the ambiguity of the novel. I thought the ambiguity was part of the beauty of the story.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, losing the ambiguity, I feel you lose something of the story.
Isn't that also a little bit a part of Paul's style?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, he likes ambiguity.
Paul's last two books weren't really that ambiguous.
No, I didn't read any of those.
I need to read some of his stuff.
He did.
Yet.
It was a Soul Survivor or like the pandemic novel he did about the rabies.
Yeah. Survivor Song.
Survivor Song. That one had no ambiguity.
Okay, I mean that makes sense.
I was like, nah, it's rabies going on, bro. Come on.
Yeah. I
And
mean,
then
kind of like he was kind of riding the Bird Box high, maybe. Terrible.
I mean, I will say he wrote that one 2 years before COVID happened, and then it released during COVID.
Yeah,
which was a terrible time to release that novel.
It really is. He should have postponed it.
I love the Paul Bearers Club does have an ambiguous element to it, but it's more of a coming of age horror novel than some of his other stuff.
It's a vampire book, isn't it?
Yeah, kind of, sort of.
Yeah. Like I've seen a lot of people like, hey, if you like vampires, then check this out, and they include his book, and I'm like, really? It's vampires?
Yeah, like I'd say that book, like his newer stuff's less ambiguous. I feel like part of this thing was he said this in an interview a while ago. He was tired of being called the ambiguous dad horror guy. And he wanted to go into ambiguous dad horror books. So
okay, but I think that's okay.
Yeah, I think it's so cool to explore your voice and find out the type of writing.
Yeah, definitely. I agree with that. But it's okay to be typecast into this as long as it's not hurtful, you know?
Yeah, I feel like most people are sort of typecast in this stuff. I mean, like you look at King and his stories are all, they all are different, but they all kind of have the same kind of concept of.
Yeah, they all happen in Maine.
Yeah, they all happen in Maine. They're all like a twist on like 1950s, and they're always like some magical person's involved. So
so always with some kind of addiction.
Exactly. And we're like, I mean, and we've discussed other people. You look at like, So I get wanting to have like a typecast, but at the same time, if that works for you, and if people like it, then go for it. And it just, who knows? It's weird.
I mean, I also find beauty in it because, people are subjective and people are, different. So
yeah, exactly.
So I also continuing on. I got a few more. I'm almost done. Last of Us episode 3. I know you haven't seen it yet, Vitlame. I'm not going to spoil anything. Don't worry.
What now? Last
of Us episode 3. Have you seen that?
No. I knew you would ask this. No, I haven't yet. I haven't yet. I am waiting because I do not have the patience to wait every single week for a new episode now. So I will wait until there has at least 5 episodes, and then I will binge it.
Oh man, I love the wait. I love the suspense of the wait. I
can't because I feel like that I will lose interest because we have so much fucking stuff to consume. That if you don't binge it right away, I'm sorry, I'm falling victim to that. But yeah, I probably will lose interest if I don't get to consume it everything in one big bite.
Honestly, I get that. I personally love the week wait. But no,
it was torture for me when we were waiting for Peacemaker.
every Sunday I was so I think it was Sunday. Maybe? I was so excited every week to see that episode of Peacemaker. Yeah. Just like I'm super excited for tomorrow for the new Last of Us episode. But
I haven't seen it. You don't need to spoil it for me because TikTok basically has.
I'm sorry, TikTok spoiled it for you.
Yeah.
You couldn't escape that on TikTok. That was everywhere.
No. Yeah, it was everywhere. I was like, I don't want to see this. Give me D&D stuff instead.
All I'll say is, have you seen it yet, Matt, or no?
No. I mean, no.
All I'll say is it was a very beautiful episode, and it pissed off lots of conservatives.
Of course it did.
This episode, episode 3 is a bottle episode, so it's more of a thematic episode than it is a plot-driven episode.
Yeah. It was I heard it like it was a filler. It was not really something that was important in the game, but they felt like, I mean, we need to explore this shit.
Well, they actually recontextualized it to make it important to something in the game.
Oh yeah. So yeah, it was something like that.
There's a letter at the end that Ellie reads, and that letter is thematically important to the journey of the game story If you've played the game, you'll know where it's going. If you haven't played the game, by the end of season 1, you'll understand the connection of that letter they do at the end of the episode. Okay. So thematically, it adds into the themes of the show, but it's not advancing the plot of the show all that much because it's a flashback episode. But it was very beautiful. And Nick Offerman and Murray Bartlett both acted their asses off, and it was beautiful to see.
I mean, I love Nick Offerman, and Pedro Pascal, so there is no way that I'm not going to end up watching this show. So
that's about it for me this week. What about you guys, Matt?
Yes. All right. So I read Madhouse at the End of the Earth, The Belgacia's Journey into the Dark Antarctic Night by Julian Sancton. So this is a nonfiction story about this ship. Well, actually, it's about captain from Belgium who wants to explore Antarctica. This was in 1898, 1897-ish. And so no one's explored it yet. Belgium is just, well, maybe like just, I would say 30 years ago, had just became an official country. And so this captain from there really wants to put Belgium on the map and prove that they can do something cool. And he's a big fanatic of exploring. There's been people exploring, like the north and all these different places up north, but no one's really gone down and did anything in Antarctica. So he's going to be the first. So gets a crew together, and it's just about this group that goes down there and all the troubles that they face just even getting down there. Half the crew, because Belgium, again, in this book is only has like 30 miles of coast. So it's not like they have a lot of sailors there. And so he has to kind of just get who he can. And half the crew is like basically criminals that he has to kick off the ship. And they eventually get down there, and he's so set on finding the magnetic South Pole because he wants to kind of make it more of a scientific journey and not just a scene for glory or whatever like that. He's got to find the Antarctic South Pole. So anyway, he's super forced on doing that. He's pushing the crew, and they get trapped in ice, and so their ship gets grounded, and so they have to winter in Antarctica, and it just turns into this like horrible, torturous event. And Julian Sancton, I mean, like, he does such a great job because they all kept journals. They all had reports and everything like that. So everything is in there that happened, and they just, I mean, there's no sunlight down there for 3, 4, 5 months or something like that. And so it's just this like effect of no sun, being trapped. The cook isn't very good, so they're getting tired of eating the same mush every day. Half the crew ends up going insane. And like we get this description of their insanity, of them just like staring or screaming or just, like lethargy. They're just laying there. And it's just all the things that could possibly go wrong have went wrong with this crew. And it's just, it's so enthralling. The way he wrote this book, you're in it. You can't stop because you want to know what happens, and you want to know like if they make it out, and not all of them do. And like, it's just this, you get to, and you're like invested in to the point where you're sitting there and you're waiting for it to get sunlight, because they're hoping if it gets sun, enough of it will kind of melt to let their ship free and like get out of the ice. And then you got the captain that's kind of still pushing on going, even though they're like, we can't winter another year, everyone's gonna die. And they are, but he's pushing on it. He ends up getting really sick, and like he's not seeing anybody. And this isn't a very big ship, and so and what's funny is they have to write letters back and forth to each other, to the captain. And you're like, the ship is small, they could walk, but like he was going crazy, and so they couldn't talk to him. And like, so you're there, you're like, dude, you can't do this another winter, everyone's gonna die. And then once the sun comes, it doesn't melt all the ice, so they have to figure out some way to break through. And it's just it's super enthralling. If you've watched, I think it was, The Terror. This isn't the same, but it's a little bit after that. But it's the same kind of idea of a group of men trapped in ice and just dealing with being with each other and what that all means, and like the ice is like in a silly way, I'll say, is alive. It's just constantly moving, and it's this constant noise. And the way he writes it, it's like eating up the ship because it just keeps closing on them. And every time they maybe say make a trench, it closes the trench or it opens up magically and eats one of their things. It's just Madhouse at the End of the Earth. If you're looking for anything kind of about a group of people trapped on a ship, this is the one to read. It's so good.
That sounds awesome.
Yeah, it's amazing. Like, and it's done he did a really good job of just being like, here's everything that happened, and then also kind of giving it enough of a narrative flair to be like I said, you're enraptured and hoping they make it. And like, you do get a bit of what happened to them after, because it's interesting, like the things that happened to this group of people who suffered a lot, and what, because they did all end up having some sort of disease. Basically they ended up having a type of scurvy, which they didn't think they had. And so that scurvy kind of made them a little wacky. Then plus this constant darkness just affected them in a way we just don't realize. So I definitely recommend checking that out. The other thing I read, or both two things I read, were one back in December, some Tim Meyer books. And so I read those, and I'll just cover one because I want to. I read The Sea in the Stars. That was super good. It was a little cosmic-y, interesting story, but a really fun one was Pteranodon Canyon. And this is a dinosaur cowboy story, set back in the Old West. You got a bunch of cowboys. You have some bad cowboys that are killing pterodactyls, and they're ripping off their beaks. And then you have another group of cowboys coming to hunt these guys down. And it's a fun cowboy romp, and lots of dinosaurs in this. And like, he's a lot of fun. The two of his I read, this one, and we read what was it, Wormwood. So like, I've read a couple Tim stories, but I feel like this one was the most fun of his I've read, just because it's got dinosaurs in it, and there's dinosaurs running around eating people, and then you got cowboys, and they're all super cowboy-esque and like gruff and sharpshooters. You got this woman Nellie who's like this, Annie Oakley kind of could shoot from a million miles away and hit the target and all this stuff, and she's in it, and she's firing away, and it's a blast. If you need dinosaurs and you need cowboys, read Pteranodon Canyon. And yeah,
are there cowboy dinosaurs?
They're not, unfortunately. And there are mention of people riding dinosaurs like horses, but then usually it's kind of like, well, yeah, those people would fall off and get trampled, so they didn't do it. So none of that. And like, he left it open. I mean, like, he ends it. It all wraps up in a bow, but like, you still have this whole world that he could play in, and it's fun. He doesn't explain why the dinosaurs are there. They're in the Old West U.S. Everything is the normal Old West. People are around. It's like, well, there's dinosaurs too, So if a T-Rex comes stomping down your village, just, I don't know, hide. There's no do your best, or just try to shoot them in the eyeball a bunch, and maybe they'll go away. He did like, and I don't know if this is a real dinosaur. I'm not up on my dinosaur lore.
I'm sorry, I just started imagining it. It's like, the head is no good. Shoot him in the eyes. Trying to find those big little bead-licking eyes, because dinosaurs don't have big eyes. Not a lot of them do, at least. Yeah. So you have to be really good at shooting.
You better be very good, or you're doomed.
Yep. And be fast about it because you might get trouble.
Oh, that's perfect. Yes. It's great. So if you want to see some awesome dinosaur eye shooting action, Pteranodon Canyon.
Perfect. Anything else?
Nah, that's it.
And Vitlame.
Yeah, I'm like always, I haven't been doing a lot of reading. But I did. Well, I have started on. I started last weekend. I started reading Legend of Lattes.
Oh yeah, how is that?
Yeah, by Travis Baldree. So yeah, I'm enjoying it. It's like it's marketed as like a cozy fantasy, and yeah, it's super cozy.
It's very cozy.
It's just you're basically just reading about this orc barbarian named Viv, and she has been like her entire life. She's been doing these kind of dungeon crawling and adventuring. And at just one point, like at the beginning of the story, she's like finishing up a really big bad guy. And after she's done, you're like, yeah, all right, see ya, I'm gone. And her group is like, wait, what? You're going? And she's like, yeah, see ya, not turning back. And she just goes to a random village or town that she had like stopped a couple of years further, like a couple of years back. And she's like, yeah, this is where I'm gonna open up my coffee house. and it's so funny because like a lot of people don't know about coffee there, and like she's like, oh yeah, during my adventures I went to this gnome village and they had this like places called cafes and they had coffee and it was amazing. I tasted it and I want to introduce you guys to it.
I love it.
Yeah, so it's basically just, I think I'm on page 70 or something like that, but like I'm still just reading about her, building the coffee house.
Yeah, it gets great.
Yeah, and even though it's so mundane because it's in a fantasy setting and it's an orc, I'm just like, this is riveting read. I love this.
That sounds amazing.
It is, and I really once I have the time to finish it, I'm really excited to finish it. But yeah, that's the only thing that I like in terms of reading. I have been listening to another podcast called Conspriacy Theories, and it's really fun.
Nice.
Well, you go, Vitlame. I cut you off.
Yeah. I mean, it's I'm not much of a conspiracy theorist myself, and the people who are running this podcast, they claim that they're not. They're just saying that they have an open mind, and they're just they're discussing the usually the three top conspiracy theories, and then they're kind of rating it like from most believable to this is the most ridiculous shit I've ever heard. And it's really interesting because there are some things that I hadn't learned about, and I'm learning a lot. I'm for one, and this is mostly because I'm really grateful that I believe that this happened to you guys. But I'm really happy that Theodore Roosevelt put forth the FDA.
Oh God, yeah.
because otherwise you'd probably still be eating embalmed steaks.
Oh, tasty.
Yeah, they did that. They put formaldehyde into rotting steaks and sold it to soldiers.
Oh, good times.
Yeah, and Theodore Roosevelt was one of the people who actually consumed this and got sick. So after he recovered, he was like, "Fuck this shit! I'm putting together an act," and he created the FDA.
Yay!
Yay!
So yeah. I mean, you should be happy he's on a mountain.
Yeah. Yes. Saving us from dying.
Yeah, I mean, but it's also like it's exploring a lot of interesting things, like recent things. Also, like I listened to the and that was actually a really hard thing to listen to. It was the Grenfell Tower disaster.
I don't think I know that one.
It was the fire that happened in 2017 in London, in Kensington.
Oh.
It was this huge apartment complex that just caught fire, and it wasn't supposed to caught fire because it was made out of concrete. Like it wasn't because it's made out of concrete, like it would be able to contain the fire within one place. But because the people who built this place and the people who maintained it, they didn't go they didn't follow regulations, and they cut costs to save money or something like shit like that, to save money on some other shit that caused the fire to spread and killed 70 people.
Jeez. So wait, what's the conspiracy there that they didn't?
The conspiracy is that the people, like the council in Kensington, they knew that they were cutting costs, and they didn't let people know about it.
I see. Okay.
Yeah,
and the podcast is just called Conspriacy Theories?
Yeah.
Huh. That's an easy title.
Yeah, it is, and they, I think, I mean, the investigation on this part, in particular, like it's still ongoing. But I think this conspiracy theory is the most accurate because greed always is the culprit.
Oh yeah.
And capitalism.
Yes, 100%.
Yeah. And so I've been really like digging into that, and then of course, in regards to watching, the second season of Vox Machina is on, and I've been keeping up, and this is the most amazing shit I've ever watched.
I know. I did not watch last night's, but I'm caught up to last night's episodes.
Okay,
the one.
I'm almost caught up. Like we watched one episode yesterday that came out yesterday, but I think they release like every 3 episodes every week.
Yeah, it's crazy how many they're releasing.
Yeah. Which is awesome. It's so good.
Yeah.
But the stakes are so much higher.
Yes.
And like the characterization is so much better. Like Keyleth is like, if people don't realize that Keyleth is the most badass MVP ever,
right?
They need to get a grip.
Seriously.
Druids are amazing.
Yes. Yeah, no, I loved it. And so you saw the episode with the song with the Sphinx that Scanlan.
Yes.
I love that so much.
And it's so funny because when they were fighting him, this is because I play a lot of D&D, I kept shouting at the screen like, do torture, like play, I cited all the bard spells that bards usually can do, and I was just waiting like, do that spell, and then he did. And I'm like, yes, he did it.
Oh my gosh, yeah, that was perfect.
It's so good, and I also appreciate the fact because this is like a made up, of course, this is a made up world that Matt Mercer created. And I'm now currently in a new campaign, new D&D campaign, and we are doing Cult of the Netherdeep.
Oh, you are? That's awesome.
Nice.
Yeah,
that's a good one.
Yeah, and that happens in Exandria. This is the world of Legend of Vox Machina.
Yeah.
And it is so much fun, and it's so fun to watch. It's even more fun to watch season 2 because then it is about Vax's journey with the matron of Ravens.
Yes.
And my character the character that I play, she is a cleric of the matron of Ravens.
Oh, that's so cool.
Like she's a death cleric, and I'm like seeing all the juicy little details about her. I'm like, yes, I'm soaking it all in. I need all the info about her. And it's so funny because I keep comparing Wax, like, oh, he's so afraid of her. You shouldn't be. My character isn't. She loves her. So yeah, I'm super. I love this series. If you like Dungeons and Dragons, or if you've been like watching or listening to Critical Role, this is awesome. This the animation, the characterization, the plot. It is so interesting. It's so fun.
Yeah, it's just great.
So yeah, that's the only thing that I've been doing.
Well, before we get started, I did want to say, if you want a podcast that's going to make you laugh a lot, and this is not a sponsorship, it's a new podcast I just discovered. And if you enjoy our silly conversations that we have on this podcast, check out one called Pearlmania 500. It's this guy. I've been following his TikTok for a while, and part of his TikTok is just like he's been posting videos of him and his wife just talking about weird internet stuff, and like him trying to explain it to his wife, and his wife like not really getting it until she gets it. Oh and like the conversations was really fun. And so they decided to start a podcast where each episode the wife does a deep dive into a topic, he does a deep dive into a topic, and then they just talk to each other about what they learned in their deep dive.
Oh my god, that's so funny.
It is hilarious. So I would say if you want a good laugh, like I highly recommend checking that out during a work commute because it's great. But we should move over into Junji Ito territory.
Yay!
Yes.
And what story would you guys like to talk about first?
Oh man, that's a great question. Well, let's. We can. I know you two both had a list, so maybe we can start from the top. So I think Used Record was one you wanted to discuss.
Yeah. So Used Records, I think a fun, short Junji Ito story.
Yeah.
Where you just have this mysterious record, and all it is someone making scat sounds. Not like poop scat, but like scat vocals.
I have a feeling this is why you love this story. For those of you who don't know, Rich loves ska.
Scat. Scat's a vocal style. That's like the bup, the bup, the bup, the bup.
Yeah.
That's kind of like a scat style vocals.
Like a jazzy kind of thing.
Jazzy, stuff like that. And so there's some, it's just vocals and that's it. There's no music, just this odd vocal pattern that this girl falls in love with this record and steals it and runs away, which causes the guy to attack her with a rock because he wants this record back so bad. And she kills him by hitting him in the head with her.
Well, it's two girls.
Oh, it's two girls. Yeah, it's just two girls.
Yeah.
And like they're listening. We're at one of their houses and they're listening, and then she's like she steals it, and then she does the rock thing, and then that's when like it gets a little wacky.
And then it turns out everybody wants this record.
Yeah.
They found a music shop it was originally stolen from.
Yeah.
She goes to a jazz cafe and plays it, and everyone's like, "Oh shit, it's this mysterious record." And eventually it ends up with revealing that it was a live recording of somebody at a concert after getting hit by a car. Or a recording studio after getting hit by a car.
Yeah.
They were laying on stage, and that was like her dying music, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
well, not really dying music
really
because
dying.
she was already dead when she started singing.
Yeah, it was just a death rattle coming out of her throat.
And what's sorry, go on.
And everyone who hears it gets entranced by it, and they like get obsessed about it.
Mm-hmm.
And it drives everyone to their doom.
Yeah, it's
like every Junji Ito story always is about some mysterious thing driving people to their doom.
Yeah.
The one thing, like, it's funny, this one, and then like some of the later ones too. There's always like a scene where one person gets so insane that they kill the other person. I noticed it this time reading through it. I can't think of all the stories. I know we're going to talk about a couple of them, but there's always like a panel or two where it's two people and one of them is like, ah, and then smashes the other one upside the head. And so like, it's always some rando thing like that kind of.
Yeah, but do you know why this sticks out?
Why is that?
Well, this is my interpretation of it because I have already lived in Japanese culture. So this is basically, I think, Ito's interpretation of the nail that sticks out of the coffin.
Huh.
in which he is basically portraying individualism, because that thing doesn't really, it's not really it's not really something that the Japanese culture prides itself on. They are more like a unit.
Yeah.
Like the herd community is like a really important factor of Japanese culture, and this being different or snapping out of this like normality is probably his twisted view of the nail that sticks out of the coffin, or like that needs to be hammered down.
That makes sense.
Yeah, I love Japanese culture. It's like if you're the one that sticks out, the society's got to hammer you down, so you conform to the rest of society.
Yeah.
Huh. Well, that answers that.
We spent some time in Japanese culture.
Yeah. You notice this when you're like from Western culture that really I wouldn't say like prides itself in individualism, but encourages it.
Yeah.
And you go into another culture where it's basically frowned upon, you really start to see the signs.
But I'd say next up in the collection is one of Vitlame's favorites, Shiver. And if you have trichtophobia, this is one you want to look at, because there are holes everywhere.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Oh man.
It's so much. I don't have this phobia at all, and I am but I totally understand this fear, and especially in regards to this story.
Yes.
Because in the story it's about a boy who lives next to this his neighbors who have like this unkept garden, and he always hears screams from the neighbor's girl. Her name is Rina, and there's always a doctor coming in, always the same doctor who's always coming in wearing days of the week. I can't remember when. And then he always sees her out the window, and she's like there's these spots covering her arms, and at first you would probably think she has the measles or something.
Yeah.
Or like she has chicken pox or anything or something like that. But Ito does this really grotesque body horror thing where he really just goes into horrific details. and he just does it with basically like if you had a magnifying glass, this is how you're seeing it.
Yeah.
And he does this in the story. Like when you see the girl, like in the story, when you see her pointing and you see the arm, and you're like, oh yeah, she definitely has like chicken pox or something like that. But no, if you turn the page, you will see that Ito goes, like he expands the image. Like, no, look further. No, look closer. Look really deep into the pores of this woman's skin. And you just see that she, instead of being covered in chicken pox or something like that, no, it's like really deep holes. And it's like covered in it. It's not even just like, oh no, it's like a hole from a gash or something. No, this is like a black fucking hole.
Yeah.
Yeah, like you can't even see through. It's just dark.
It's just dark. It's horrifying. And then as the story progresses, we get to know that the boy's grandfather, he suffered from the same affliction, basically. But his parents are like, no, you're just dreaming it. It didn't happen, something like that. So he and his friend, they kind of start digging into this, like, because they find it an intriguing mystery. And they discover his grandfather's journal, in which one of his army buddies, he comes home with kind of like an insect, like a jade carving of an insect.
Jade insects.
Yeah. And it was some in the mountains of Java. I'm assuming that's in Vietnam.
Maybe?
Or in Guam, maybe?
Yeah.
I would think Guam. I think Java is in Guam. It says here during the war, and they went to Guam in the war.
Yeah.
They did go to Guam in the war.
Yeah.
Guam's a pretty small place, though.
Yeah. And so they discovered this jade carving, and they gave it to the grandfather. And he didn't really think too much of it, but both of those army buddies, they started suffering from these kind of shivers or these chills, and then a couple of weeks later, they were just found dead.
Yeah, the timing was a little wacky on this.
Yeah. And then after he receives this jade carving from his army buddy, he starts to suffer the same type of symptoms. And I'm
looking up right now. Java is in Indonesia.
Oh, okay. Oh, I mean, I think they unfortunately went everywhere in Asia during the war.
They're bad. They're bad boys.
They are. No doubt about that. But yeah, they and then this is where I completely understand this fear about holes. Because it goes into details of the grandfather then being covered in these holes, and then having a dream that insects were crawling into the holes and crawling inside. And this, because I hate bugs, this was horrifying. And I was like, yeah, I can understand the fear of holes now.
Yeah.
And then basically the story goes on that, they don't really mind. They think it's something stupid. And then they discover that Rena doesn't have those holes anymore. Like, she looks like a normal girl. And then his friend comes to see him after being absent for like a couple of weeks. And you get to see the most horrifying vision I've ever seen.
Yes. Oh my God. Just the eyeball flipping.
Yeah, this is a part where I love about Ito. Yes. He's this is where he shines. This is like showing these grotesque imagery. That's his best thing.
But it's also what I like about Ito, because I've seen most of the new Netflix Ito anime, and I wasn't a big fan of it. One thing I love about Ito's work, and Shivers is a good example of this, is just before you see that grotesque image, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you look at it, you have the windy storm panel, watching TV. There's the focus of the door in the back. Then we get the of him going to the back. We get a single panel of him about turning on the light, opening the curtain. Then the page ends at the curtain open. So we have to turn the page.
Yes.
And we get that horrifying image with that page turn. And that's what Junji Ito does amazingly well. And I think it's why his work is hard to adapt into animation.
Yeah, I agree with that. I definitely agree with that. You don't get this horrific reveal as it is adapted into the screen.
Yeah, like it's something that something gets lost between the page and the screen with that lack of that turn, because that page turn is what really packs that punch.
Yeah.
Yes, it really does. And it's just
also that eyeball. I'm looking at that eyeball right now.
I know. Me too. It's just like not only that, like in the other pages when he's screaming and you see like there's a missing part in his mouth, and you see like his teeth poking out. You're like, oh Jesus!
God. Yeah.
And there's even there are holes in his tongues.
Yeah.
Like, seriously, this story is so good, and the reason why his friend is covered in holes is because he found the jade carving, and the curse, this supposed curse, it was subjected onto him. And and the story ends with him dying, like being found in a ditch, dead, full of holes. I actually really like that story, because it has both like a perfect ending, but also a little bit of an ambiguous one, because you don't know where the fucking jade carving went.
Yeah, and because you get the tie to the doctor.
Yeah, but you don't know if the doctor got the carving or if someone else took it.
Yeah, exactly. So you just know it's just gonna keep happening.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's yeah.
It's a fun story. It's creepy, it's gross, it's Ito at his best.
Yes. Definitely. And then of course we have the hanging blimp one. This I would say that this one has like a content warning also.
Yeah.
Because it deals with suicide.
This whole story is a metaphor for suicide.
Yeah. But I think it's done in such an ambiguous way that you kind of wouldn't think it was at the beginning.
No, it totally is. By the end, the way I see this story is it's because there's especially in Japan around the time I'm pretty sure this was written, like in the early 2000s, Japan, even up to mid 2000s, Japan had a big suicide issue among the youth.
Yeah.
And this is kind of being like everybody has it in them to kill themselves. Mm-hmm. And you don't know when that person's going to take their own life, if they're going to take their own life, and when that's going to come. Yeah. And when it's going to come, it's going to be at random. Yeah. That's kind of how I take this story.
Yeah, and it's I still think it's also interesting how also the story starts. It starts basically in the future.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then it goes and it flashbacks into what really happened, and that that's not common in a lot of stories, especially with Ito stories.
And that's funny because I was thinking it's interesting with these ones because a lot of them kind of it is a story within a story that sort of ties back, and so because I think I noticed it about halfway through where I was like, well, a lot of these stories are something like somebody is telling, like we're seeing somebody in the present, they're telling their past, and then we catch back up to their present. And I'd have to flip through, but it's just this kind of interesting way he does some of the stories like that. And I did like in this one that the initial the panel of the singer girl hanging. At first you're like, oh well, she did it to herself. And then you kind of realize later, oh no, it's because the head got caught.
Yeah.
So, but
and it's a really interesting subject, and how he managed to portray it. Because when I first read it, I was like, this is interesting. Why? Because at the beginning of the panel, you're seeing this girl just standing, like hiding in a corner. She's shivering, and there's a constant knock on a window.
Yep.
And you keep the first that popped into my head was like, oh, this is a zombie thing.
Yeah.
Because we are saturated with that kind of stories, but it's not common in Japan, So it would have been like an interesting take on it. But then as you read forward, it's like, no, it's actually it's about suicide. Interesting. And you kind of you're looking through the eyes of this girl who is kind of reliving the couple of weeks that has been happening in her life, and it started with her friend's suicide.
Yes.
Or a friend apparent suicide, because she doesn't believe that her friend would do anything like that because she was happy.
Yeah.
And then she discovers that one of her classmates was her boyfriend, and she thinks that he might have something to do with it, or at least know something. And she follows him to the woods where there's this rumor that they might have seen that girl in that park or something like that.
Well, yeah, I think he said, well, I saw her here.
Yeah.
They heard the rumor, and so he was. Basically he was there, and then you see the two heads floating.
Yeah, and you see and there's on the news there's her floating head is just wandering around the streets.
Yeah.
And it kind of goes into bizarre territory there. You're like, floating head? What the fuck is that?
Yeah.
And it kind of keeps your intrigue as you keep reading, and then you notice that the girl starts, to follow the guy because she still thinks that he's something to do with it. And she sees her friend's head floating above. And then she sees the boyfriend, and he is desperately trying to reach out to her.
Yeah.
And then, as you read forward, you see a noose. And you're like, oh no, is he gonna kill himself? What the fuck? And you see the noose gets closer and closer, and he doesn't even notice it. And he gets hanged by a balloon with his own face on it, like his own head. And you're like, what's happening? You're basically like you are like sharing the emotion of the girl, because she's like, what the fuck is this?
But the balloon heads are having a smooch.
Yeah, and then they smush. Just to put it bluntly. The floating head smush with the dangling body of the boyfriend just dangling away.
Yeah.
And then as the story progresses, you see like they think this is just this one single event happening, and the others don't believe her. But then they suddenly see up in the sky balloons with the shape of their heads, with a noose hanging down from them, coming towards them. And just seeing like the facial expressions that he uses for the balloons is the most creepy thing ever.
Oh yeah, he's got a couple panels in this story that are just haunting. There's like at one point near the beginning, the boyfriend talks about looking out the window and seeing the main suicide, her head is just floating in his yard, and it's just this like creepy scene. It's just a one panel scene. It's just his head. And then the kissing scene, you're just it's like this weird like thing, because it's just these two giant floating heads and they're just like making out. And then the facial expressions of the four there, because there's three other girls that are kind of total four girls in this they're all friends, and their heads all come down, and it's just like creepy. And you got like the snaking nooses, because like the nooses aren't just like, they're not just like kind of fishing like these heads, they're not just kind of swooping down and hooking people, they're like the rope
snacking.
The rope is like snaking through stuff to grab them, and it's just like, oh, and they like
it's also really interesting, like when there's this panel in which there's this guy who sees the balloons, and he's like, don't worry, I'll take care of it, and he brings forth a crossbow. Like
I has a crossbow.
I kind of want to ask who owns a crossbow in Japan, but that's besides the point. And he uses that crossbow to shoot one of the balloons. And it hits the girl, like the balloon, one of the girl balloons, in this cheek, and it starts to deflate. And you think, as you read on, you're like, oh, great, crisis averted. This is how you get rid of them. But then as you go a little bit further down, you see that if you damage the balloon in any way, that will happen to the person whose the balloon is impersonating. So you see this horrifying detail. Like, I love this. This is so grotesque. It's like how he drew this is amazing. You see the actual girl. Her own face deflates like a balloon, and it's just basically is like all the fluids are being sucked out of her, and it reminded me of the scene in The Mummy.
Yes. I
just love seeing also the girls, the other girls' like expressions. She's like, "Oh, I'm fucked."
Yep. And what's interesting with that, and this is like such a great story to talk about because there's so much happening in there. Because like you see that scene, and then a little bit later you get to where they're watching the main girl, her family, they're in their house, which we can talk about in a second, but they're watching the news, and the news broadcast is saying like, don't hurt the balloons because that will in turn hurt somebody. And it's such like it. If there was a story, and I'm sure there's plenty of stories that he could expand on, and I don't know. I didn't watch the anime. At least I didn't watch this episode, so I don't know if they do anything more. But there's such an interesting concept.
They changed the girl who commits suicide at the beginning, but that's about it. Everything else is exactly the same.
Because it's such an interesting concept. As soon as I read that panel, I was like, oh man, what an exploration to go into of like somebody crazy out there shooting out these balloons and like hurting people, and just what that could give you for a deeper story is so interesting. The other thing I thought of when they're in the house, because the news broadcast is telling everyone, hey, stay in your house. You know, the nooses are trying to hook you. And it's interesting reading it, we'll say sort of post-pandemic. But anyway, like that idea of everyone staying home and outside is danger and everything like that, and kind of thinking of this story with reading this story now, you're just like, oh, that hits home even more. This idea of like them having to stay home and try to figure out like, we need to get food. How do we go out and get food? And like, what do we do? And thinking of all these different ways to trick the balloons to not hook you. And the funny thing I had to laugh and is the dad, and I'm guessing.
Thank you. I was just gonna get to that.
The dad is like, "Well, I gotta go to work," and they're like, "Are you insane?" He's like, "No, I need."
Because this is Japanese culture at its core.
That is Japanese culture.
This is Japanese culture at its core. They have to go to the office. They have to work overtime. They don't get paid for overtime. They're working until fucking 11 in the night.
So yeah, he's just like, I'm out of here. Make sure the bath is ready when I come back.
Yep.
It's just like, dude. And then, oh,
like,
man.
no regard. Like, nope, I'm gonna be fine. If I shield my neck, I'll be okay.
Yeah. And like you see, like the brother at one point decides to be the man of the house. And he's like, I'm going to get groceries. I got an umbrella. This will be fine. And then the umbrella does get hooked, but we find out later he is definitely not fine.
Yeah, he's not fine.
But yeah, this is a huge, like, just this window, this little frame in this story is just Japanese culture at its core. And I had to laugh incredibly much when I read it. I was like, are you fucking kidding me? And then I was like, no, actually, this fits so fucking well with this.
Yeah. Well, and again, it after pandemic, during that time there was people saying they had to go I mean, like, there were some people that had to go to work because they just had to, and then other people who had the choice still want it to go in as opposed to say work from home.
But that's the thing, like in Japan they don't have, like during the pandemic they didn't have that option. And do you know one crazy little fact that I actually discovered while listening to Conspriacy Theories? I listened to the Fukushima nuclear power plant episode.
Oh, that's so.
It hit a really hard home with me because this happened when I was in Japan. I was in Japan during the earthquake and the tsunami. So yeah, this was not a funny memory to go back into. But after the earthquake happened in the Fukushima power plant, and when the tidal wave hit the plant, of course, all communications went down because they hit the telephone poles and everything. And the only way for them to communicate with other places was through fax. They couldn't do that because, no fucking service. And that's the thing about Japanese culture, especially work culture. They still use fax. It's 2023, and they still use fax.
Oh my God.
And I kept thinking when they revealed this to me, I was like, do you understand how much you could have avoided people's lives? How you could have saved people's lives if you did not use this ancient fucking method? there's a lot of things to love about Japan, but there's also a lot of things you really hate. And there are a lot of things that they really need to get their shit together. And this is one of them. So yeah, going back to the story, we said I thought it was also kind of funny that, like you said, the boy, like the eldest son, he, is a man of the family, he has to provide.
Yeah.
And he thinks he can survive by throwing his umbrella at his noose. And you in the panel you kind of see that he snacks onto the umbrella and it looks like he's safe. And you're like, okay, I mean there's some hope. But then you kind of get this kind of clue when the noose kind of rips through the fabric of the umbrella. And it's like his mother says, what should we do? It's crushing the umbrella. And I'm like, well, he's fucked.
Yeah.
And this also touches upon the fact with Japanese culture, because the mother is just a housewife. And when there's nothing to do in a crisis like this, she feels like she has no purpose. And she steps outside and meets her fate by hanging.
Yeah.
Basically, like he refers to it, she became a hanging sacrifice. I'm like, what kind of sacrifice do you mean? And so, yeah, but during that, like at that panel, you notice that, okay, we've come back to the place where we started the story, where she's cowering in the corner.
Yeah.
And the story takes a nice little twist that I thought was really interesting, is that you suddenly hear her brother's voice.
Yeah.
And it's like, hey, I'm okay. I got some supplies. You're gonna need to open up, otherwise the noose is gonna get me. And you kind of like see the ray of hope in the girl's eyes. He's like, yeah, you're alive, okay. And she opens up the window and she's met up with her brother's corpse.
With the umbrella.
The umbrella. Yeah. And the balloon with her brother's face says, hey, sis, thanks for opening the window.
Yeah.
And her balloon is just waiting just a couple of meters below, like above. Like, okay, this is
and then
bleak as fuck.
The final panel is the noose making its way through the window, or about to make the window.
Yeah.
So good.
Also, his face, like that close-up panel of his face.
Yes.
It's so morbid.
Yes. Like the bloated tongue and everything.
His tongue isn't weird like typical Junji Ito tongues.
Yeah.
No.
It's a bit more normal than your typical Junji Ito tongue.
Yeah, this is like a realistic rendering of corpse tongue.
Yeah, it's wild.
It is a good story. This is one of the reasons why this is one of my favorites.
Yeah, so good.
But you have one, Matt, that you like, or should I say you didn't like it, but it was gross.
Are we talking about Greased? Oh, God. Yeah, Greased is a fun little one. He rounds out this collection with that, and it's a family that runs like basically just a little restaurant, and they sleep above the restaurant, and it's a not very good one, and it's not really well ventilated, and so all the grease and smoke just permeates their apartment, and they're all just covered in grease all the time. And again, gross. This is just it. You feel the grossness. He just, because we're following the daughter. It's a daughter, brother, and a dad, and we're following the daughter, and she's just describing the grease in the air. She has a whole little system of like a weather thing, and it's like grease factor or grease index is at 50 or 60, the number changes all the time. And of course, because we've discussed this of characters being mean and nasty and always hitting each other. The brother is just a complete bully jerk that gets picked on at school and then basically turns around and does it at home. And he has a fun little quirk, which is drinking vegetable oil all the time, right from the bottle.
Best nutrition ever.
It's just disgusting. And so like we like it jumps ahead a little bit. The brother's going through puberty because it's greasy all the time. He's covered in pimples, and he gets even meaner. And we get probably the grossest panel you'll ever read, in which he holds his sister down and then pops all of his zits, and they all just come oozing out.
Yep.
All over her face.
It is absolutely gross. And it just, then it kind of goes from there. They kill him and they eat him, and then the dad is trying to make the girl the same way. So like it's just that you feel it as you're reading it, because he goes into so much detail about the walls being covered in grease, all their clothes being soaked, the bed being soaked, no matter the bathtub when they take a bath. It's just
there's like a layer of it on top.
Yeah, it is absolutely disgusting the whole way through.
How there's like the volcano that looks like a giant zit in the town too.
Yeah.
It's like, and I did love that too, because the daughter, she at the beginning of the story, she likes to be outside, obviously, and she just stares at the volcano, but then slowly her dreams permeate into this volcano erupting full of oil and covering the town in oil, and everyone being greasy, and like we find out why that she's having these dreams, but it's just that volcano imagery works really well with this story. But oh my god, it's like a reading all of these, they're all short stories, and they all kind of end that way short story does, but this one is just this like gross perfect encapsulation of like almost like a flash piece that he kind of expanded just a little, where it's just we're quick shot into this family life, and it ends with a grossness, and there's grossness in the middle. It's just this thing, and you're just that one is, when I first read it, I think I probably sent the same message I sent last night, which was like, this is gross.
Yeah.
And I remembered it, like, out of everything in this, like, I kind of remembered all the stories when I was rereading it, at least enough to be like, oh yeah, I remember this, but I don't remember the whole thing that happens. But this one definitely stuck in my head, and I knew it was coming the whole way through. I was like, oh god, do I want to read it again? Yeah, I guess I do. But
and I think it's also interesting that you pointed out with the brother being this big jerk, and he's he is being bullied at school, and he directs his frustration and hate on his little sister, and this is common in Japan as well, because I don't know if this is like this unspoken rule in society, but I think it has also has to deal with the fact that they have to hammer down the nail, because they don't speak about their problems, and they don't speak about what is happening to them, like if they're being bullied at school, or if they're being harassed at work, or anything like that. They just don't talk about that. They just bury it inside, and then they vent their frustration on someone else. In which case, in most horror stories, or in like crime stories, Japanese crime stories, it is usually always directed at some other person.
Yeah.
Because they don't offer, psychologists or like therapists at school. They don't offer that, which is horrifying.
Well, and it's funny you bring that up, because that does kind of come through in some of the other stories in here too. And I know we wanted to talk about the Marionette Mansion, but I was just thinking too, like even like say the Painter story, the main character, like halfway through, he loses Tomi, and he's so frustrated, but he can't really tell anybody, and he takes it all out on the sculptor, and they're like. Or even the one we talked about with the record. I mean, like they take it out on each other. It's interesting, like when you bringing that up and then kind of rethinking these stories, that does sort of
mental
permeate.
illness in Japan is so stigmatized there. It's like it's so taboo. It's ridiculous.
I think it's changing with the youth, but like the older generation, it's very much taboo.
Yeah.
Like,
and Ito is of that generation now, so yeah.
Oh man. Well, this was a fun collection.
It's
a very fun collection. And there are many other stories to check out from it. I think this podcast has gone on for quite a bit. Is there any other? I think Fitman and I did a couple stories. Is there one more story you want to talk about, Matt?
Oh no, I'm good. I think we hit everything. I think we hit all the highlights.
Well, I say again, Junji Ito, if you're into horror manga, he's always a good one to check out. But I would also urge your audience, and this is one of my thing that kind of puts me on edge with some people. There's more horror manga out there than just Junji Ito.
Oh yeah.
But, like, always explore, always try to read what you can, like, because like, I think Blood on the Tracks is one of the best horror mangas out right now, and like, it's an incredible horror manga. It's very disturbing, but it's an incredible manga.
Oh yeah.
And they used to have lots of really good stuff out there that I highly recommend checking out. But Vitlame, where listeners get in touch with you?
They can get in touch with me on Twitter at VitlameS.
And Matt, what about you?
Yeah. First, I just wanted to mention I have a story on Tales to Terrify that came out this week, though it'll be last week when you listen to this. Yeah, Tales to Terrify podcast. I have it's I think episode 545. It's whatever the newest, sort of newest one is. You'll see my name on there.
Awesome.
That's awesome, dude.
So yeah, give it a listen. I hope you like spiders because there's a lot of them in that one.
Oh no.
And I'm on Twitter at BrandenburgDM.
And Vitlame, what about you? Vitlame, you already did your thing.
Yeah, I was like, wait, what?
You can follow me on Twitter at Rudy53088 and be sure to give Abyss a follow with @IntoStaring. And this is Richard Gerlach saying, keep staring.